Father, we are gathered tonight to learn more of your word and learn more of the language that you moved that the Bible be written in. And we ask that you bless our evening together in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay, Hebrew lesson tonight. We are going to do the last couple of letters, and we got all the way down the second to the last letter, because last week we looked at Resh, so this week we're going to look at Shin. Now, it's easiest if you're drawing it to make a W. Okay? Originally, it looked more like this. Okay, and it was teeth biting down. So the idea behind it was either eating or devouring or pressure that happens when you're chewing and you eat something. Just like that, Aaron. Just exactly like that. Now, it makes the sound sh, hence the name of the letter, Shin. However, you're going to notice as you read that there's going to be a dot either on the right or the left. Okay? If the dot is on the right, like this, it's Shin. Okay? If the dot is on the left, it's Sin. All right? And, you know, as you're reading in Hebrew, you'll begin to notice, but it's not that easy to notice. And the reason is there's a lot of other dots and dashes and notes in the letters that make it look, you know, I mean, like you'll have things like this, and then you maybe a resh, but Shin and a resh would never go together, but maybe have a vav in the middle, and the vav has a dot there. So we're going to learn what those mean, so that the goal is you will be able to read in Hebrew. Now, keep in mind, reading doesn't mean you're going to know every word that you read. Okay? When you were learning English, if you learned it what I believe is the right way, you learned the letters, and then you learned the sound of the letters, and as you looked at the letters, you sounded it out, right? D-O-G, dog. That's known as phonetics, which is the easiest way to learn a language, I believe. Okay, so that's the way you're going to learn Hebrew. What that means is you might be able to read out loud Genesis 1:1, but you don't know what the words mean. That's all right to begin with. The more you know, the more you read, if you desire to do that, the more you'll learn. It works that way. You learn it that way. And then you learn more about what the words are. And then you'll find a word. I was looking at my interlinear Bible earlier today, and it has the Hebrew, and then it has the English underneath it, English translation. And then under that, it has the transliteration that tells you how to pronounce the Hebrew. So we're gonna move there and go there and see how you do, right? There's nothing to lose in learning a language. By the way, something else, when you're learning to read a language, and like when you're learning to read Hebrew, it's very easy to get very timid and worried that you're going to do it wrong. You got to let it go. Don't worry about it. Start reading it. Go Shemot, Shemot. Shemot. No, it's Shemot. But you're getting it, right? Okay? So, anyway, that's the letter Shin. The last letter looks like this. It's the letter Tav. Okay? So that means the beginning and the ending is the Aleph and the Tav, which you already know if you've been here long enough, that in Hebrew, sometimes you'll have in the text, you'll just have these letters, and they don't mean anything, meaning there's not a word that goes with those letters. Okay? But there are a lot of rabbis that believe that those letters, they have symbolic reference to the Messiah. And in the book of Revelation, he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, which in Hebrew, Revelation was originally written in Hebrew, just like Matthew. The letters of Paul, probably not. Probably written in Greek, like you've learned. But Matthew and Revelation, definitely written in Hebrew. Revelation doesn't work in any other language except Hebrew. So, just so you know. So he says, I am the Aleph and the Tav. Well, if you go back in Torah, all of those places where that is in the Hebrew lets you know that it's like Messiah is putting a mark there for a reason. Okay? It ought to make you go, oh, wow. All right? And then maybe dig in a little bit deeper or something. But it's really neat. So this letter makes a t sound like the letter T. What other letter makes that sound? Does anybody know what? Yes, Tate or Tet, that looks like that little guy right there. Okay? Same sound. All right? That's the last letter. Originally, it looked more like this. Okay? And it means mark or mark of the covenant or covenant. So, I wonder if that's why when people that weren't able to write back in the olden days and they would sign their name, they'd have them make an X. You know, I wonder if it goes back to that. Probably does. Okay? Now, we're going to go over these out loud. I don't know, you have your paper there. If anybody needs one, I have some extra right here. Did anybody want one? Hi, Dan. Hi, Shanita. There you go. Anybody else? I got one more left. That one's like $100. $10 works. All right. So we're going to just out loud the letters of the Aleph Bet in Hebrew. And if you can see them there, great. And we'll do them nice and slow together. Here we go. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Zayin, Kof, Resh, Shin, and Tav. Yay! So next week, we'll look at vowels. And maybe right now, we'll do a couple words. See, number one, if you're able to pronounce them, and then I'll tell you what they mean. Okay? There's a word right there. How would you, even though you don't know the vowels, knowing what you know, how would you pronounce it? Dana, you got it? Okay. All right. Ah is right. Okay. All right. Second one, what letter is that? Bait. Now remember, bait is going to make one of two sounds. It's either going to be ba or it's going to be va. If, as you're reading Hebrew, it has a dot in the middle of it, it's ba. If it does not have a dot in the middle of it, it's va. So what's that word? Av. Av. Okay? Now, there's a name in the Bible that has those letters in it at the very beginning. Avraham. It means father. So Av means father, which is really neat because it's the first and second letter of the Aleph Beit. All right, and Aleph. Remember what the pictograph meaning of Aleph is? Aleph means it's the ox, and it means strong, okay? Beit means the house, okay? In, or the house. So in a way, it's strength of the house. Well, Abba comes from Av. Yep, because Hebrew and Aramaic are related. Abba's Aramaic, so they're related. Okay, now, lest you think that, all right, only the dad is the strength of the house, there's another Hebrew word, and it looks like this, and I'm going to throw you a little loop right here, okay, because you're going to look at that and you're going to go, wait a minute, that letter is not up there. When the letter mem is at the end of a word, it looks like that. It changes when it's at the end of a word. So that's a mem. So what is that word? No, it's a mem. What does mean? Mother. Okay, so Av is father, is mother. Today, in Hebrew, I believe mom is Emma, or something like that. Okay, but it's Aleph and Mem are at the root of it. What does Mem mean? In the ancient language, in the ancient pictograph, water. What is water? It's activity, it can be chaos, and it can be power. Okay? So you have a strong power marries the strength of the house, and you have mother and father put together. Sometimes can be. And something you'll learn Friday night is that, and I said this last Friday, and there was a guy sitting right over there that was, that was you, James. No, but it was, I only do that because we only do this because we love one another and we respect one another. Okay, but if the strength of the house, Av, does his job, then the power of the house, the will do her job. Okay? Often it works that way. It worked that way in my marriage. When I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, and the only reason I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing is I was ignorant. My people die for lack of knowledge. I didn't know. What do you know? You know what you grew up with. Okay, so that's the only, unless you hung around a bunch of other people that had a different vision of what marriage was, you learned from your mom and your dad. Okay, and a lot of what you learned was right. Some of it probably wasn't, but I don't know. We're getting off. Now we got to do Shemot. So let's move there. Hi. Yes.
Can you probably already told me this, but what do you do with this one where
it doesn't, there's no letter anymore. That letter is done away with, gone.
You can't use the word rope.
Right, correct. You can use the word rope, but that letter that meant rope doesn't exist anymore in Hebrew.
So if you have a dot in the date, it's pronounced date.
Ba.
It's pronounced ba, but without the dot, it's date.
Correct. The without the dot. Okay, so
But you have all.
don't let it confuse you. Be a little bit loose. Okay, be a little bit loose. Hebrew's a little bit loose. It's not, it's easier than you think that it is. It's a lot easier than English. It's easier than Greek. I had 5 years of Greek. And I wish I would have had 5 years of Hebrew, but we didn't know. So I had 1 year of Hebrew, 5 years of Greek. So I can do Greek really easily. But English is based on Greek. So and a bunch of other languages mixed in with it. So it's one of the reasons why English is not easy to learn. We already know it, so for us it's like, what do you mean? It's easy. I don't even remember learning it. I don't remember when I done learnt English.
Getting a statement said water to the woman, not relatable to her giving birth.
It might be. It might be. Yeah. Yeah. And you can be and chaos. Maybe those go together. So, all right, let's move into the reading, which is the book of names. You thought it was a book of Exodus, which means, which is the Greek word that was given to it, because it's when they left Egypt, right? So they made an exodus out of Egypt, but that isn't the Hebrew name of the book. The Hebrew name of the book is names, Shemot, and it comes from the first line, which is these are the names. And you remember all the books of Torah, if you take the names of them, they're a story within the very names of the books. So we won't go over that again. Okay, now, something that I read in Dennis Prager's book on Exodus is in the notes there, the Israelites moved to Egypt, set the stage for two of the most important events in world history. The Israelites' exodus from Egyptian slavery and the revelation of the Ten Commandments in Mount Sinai. These events are the two seminal events, other than creation itself, of the Torah, and it means the liberty and morality are the twin pillars of the Torah. Liberty and morality. So I can find agreement with that. So, I mean, there's other things you could say, well, God is the pillar. Yeah, you can say that, but anyway, Prager wrote that, and I thought that was worthy. Okay, these are the names. Sons of Israel came out of Egypt with Jacob. Each man came with his own household. Why would there be a book known as the Book of Names? Yeah. Okay, because of genealogy and the names that follow after it, okay? And something else.
Is that for the priesthood, who are in the priesthood?
Yes, that is the names of people in the priesthood. What else? There's another name in the book of Exodus. It's Yehovah, the name of God. Okay, he gives Israel his name in the book of Exodus. So it's the idea of, and remember, name in Hebrew doesn't mean the word that you're known by. Okay, that's like the very surface meaning of what name means. Name is who you are. Your name is your character. It's your actions. It's who you are. Okay, and when we get to looking at God's name, then you realize the name that he gave is who he is. So it's like that in the Hebrew Bible. Now, it may not be that way today in your life. You may be named something and you're like, I don't even know what my name means, or maybe it doesn't mean what you really are. But Patrick, you'll remember, means noble one. So, yeah, I'll take that. Byron is my middle name, and it means a meadow. So I'm the noble one of the meadow. And Hadley's a name that means the one who watches over the meadow. Isn't that interesting? I love being outdoors. So I don't know. Could have something to it. Okay, Joseph died, as did all of his brothers in all that generation. And then the descendants of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and grew very powerful, and the land became filled with them. By the way, that word, the land was filled with them, is used later in Exodus about frogs and locusts and gnats. Okay? In the eyes of the Egyptians, what was going on was Israel was becoming like bugs, like insects. They were infesting the land. They were growing so rapidly. But their growing rapidly was actually in fulfillment of the commission that was given to Adam and Hava, right? Because what is it they were supposed to do? Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. There's that word again. Fill. Okay? Now, when they left Egypt, when they entered Egypt, they entered as 70 people, if you count Joseph, who was already there. Okay? When they left, there were 600,000 men. So add a woman for every man, and then add a couple of babies at least, and you're way up in the millions. And then add the mixed multitude that left with them, and you're way up there in the millions. So their exodus, or their leaving, was a big event. Okay? All right, down to verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph. What? How could that be? Joseph was like vice president. Okay? All of the projects of what Joseph did, diverting the waterways. Okay, I don't know if you've read about any of that, but even to this day, there is a waterway, a canal in Egypt known as the Canal of Joseph. All right, because one of the reasons there was a famine had to do with the water level of the Nile, and it rose to where they knew there was going to be a famine in the land. But anyway, so it makes you wonder, how could he not know? And here's what happens, and it's happening right now in our land, is people don't know history. If you don't know it, then you're gonna make the same dumb mistakes that they made, right? Okay. Now, interesting. We read Egypt in English. In Hebrew, it's Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is mentioned in the book of Genesis as one of the sons of Ham, but the root word of Mitzrayim is Mem Tzadi Resh. Okay, which makes the word metzir, which means border, shut, or limit. And the idea is it's a compressed existence in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is where the walls come in on you, which is exactly what Israel experienced. So that's one reason, that's why the Hebrew word means what it means. Israel was enslaved in the narrow place of Egypt. Okay? Now, one of the reasons why over and over again in Torah you have the words remember, 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 remember. You have all of the Moedim, the feasts. They're all there to help us remember. Okay, so the reason we do Passover every year is so we remember. We remember about Moses and we remember about Yeshua, right? Okay? All of those are ways to help a group of people remember who they are. Later on in the Tanakh, Israel forgets who they are. In the book of Judges, at the beginning of the book of Judges, which is Judges is bad, okay? Beginning of the book of Judges, it basically says all the generation that knew all the miracles that Yehovah did died off, and they didn't let the next generation know, and so they didn't know who they were anymore. So they went and worshipped idols. So thank God that doesn't happen today, right? Okay. Now, something else, just a little note, a tidbit. The Pharaoh, the names of the Pharaoh that are in the Exodus are not mentioned. Okay? There is a tradition that the Exodus happened during the reign of one of the Ramses. And the reason was because you read in Exodus that the slaves were helping to build the city of Ramses, right? Okay, so everybody just made the assumption, well, that means that they left under Ramses. But the thing is, it doesn't match other things in history about what would have been happening then. And then there's this little thing that happens in the Bible, in the Torah, and it happens more than once. It even happens in the book of Genesis, and it's known as an anachronism. Do you know what that is? An anachronism. That's when you refer to the name of a place for what it is now rather than what it was. Okay? Because names of places, well, right now, in a way, Anchorage is an anachronism for Denina, or Denina land, right? Which is why sometimes you hear, like if you go to a meeting, a government meeting, local government meeting, they'll always begin with the acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement that we are on Denina land. Okay? Yeah, there's a lot of them. If you read in the book of Genesis, there's a lot of them, like Bethel was known as Luz. Okay? But the writers are writing about what they know when they're writing. Okay? So they're writing about Ramesses, but there's a lot of recent archaeological work that has been done. Miles Jones is one of the guys. There's others. But they have found all the evidence of the Exodus and of Joseph being there, but it wasn't in Ramesses. It had a different name in the day that it happened, okay? And that means that the Pharaoh that arose that did not know Joseph was one known as Tutmosis. And you can read about that in Jones's things if you want to. It's very interesting. Okay, so verse 9. But said to his people, look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply. And in the event of war, they might ally themselves with the enemies, fight against us, and leave the land altogether. Why does he not want them to leave? It's because they won't have any economy left. Right? I mean, they're doing all the work, building the buildings and all that. Did you know that the main reason, well, that's not the right word, one of the main reasons that the Civil War happened in the U.S. and the South didn't want to give up their slaves was right there, economics. Okay? Because they were worried if we do that, we're going to lose all of our labor, and there goes all of our money, and there goes all of our wealth, and all of our riches, and all of our plantations, and blah, 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 blah. So here we go again. Right? Okay? So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramses. Those are the ones that are anachronisms. Okay? The word, by the way, slave master, means all of those things that I listed there. And it's a combination of two words in Hebrew. One word means ruler, and the other word means body of laborers or forced laborers. Okay, so these slave masters were like governors. All right, and later on, as you read, you noticed that not only were there Egyptian slave masters, but there were Hebrew masters or foremen. And whenever the Egyptians would want to deal with the Hebrews, they didn't deal with all of them at once. They couldn't do that. So they dealt with the leaders, the foremen. They were the ones that would get whipped. Okay? And then they were the ones that ended up going to Moses and saying, hey, buddy, This is not working out well for us, which is where our reading ends, with them doing that. Okay? Now, notice that although the king of Egypt was the one giving the orders, it was the people of Egypt who carried out those orders, and that means they were guilty by complicity. Okay, they put slave masters over them. They, the Egyptians, not only Pharaoh, but all of them, they oppressed the Israelites. They worked them relentlessly. They made their lives bitter with hard labor. Okay, so why do I bring that up? Why does that matter? Why is that important? Because it happens today. All right? It happened in Germany during Hitler. You had a lot of Germans that would not have ever done what they did to the Jews, but they did it anyway. Why? What would their answer be? Actually, when they put some of those guys on trial years ago, was it the Nuremberg trials? Put them on trial. You know what almost all of them, what their answer was? I was following orders. So when I was in a mall and I went to look at blue jeans, and they were all laying out here so that you could go and you could look at them and everything, and I went to go and look at them, and I wanted to try them on, and the lady goes, you can't do that, we can't use the dressing rooms. I said, what? Why can't you use the dressing rooms? Because of COVID. I said, you'd think if I put my hands on them now and look at them, I'm not going to give them COVID, but if I put them on my body in the dressing room, I might give them COVID, and then you'll get it? And she said, I'm just following orders. And I was like, oh, okay. So, think. Right? Use your head. Okay? All right. Now, moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, or the midwives of the Hebrews. It reads that way in the text. One of whom was known as Shiphrah, and the other Puah. He said, when you attend the Hebrew woman, see them giving birth. If it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. However, the midwives were God-fearing women, so they didn't do as the king of Egypt ordered, but let the boys live. Okay? Couple of interesting things there. One, their names are in the Bible. Pharaoh's isn't. Isn't that neat? Okay? Secondly, they most likely were Egyptian women. They were not Hebrews. Okay? There's a lot of evidence of that as we read on. All right? The midwives of the Hebrews. One of the ways of evidence is in the Torah. Those who are known as God-fearers are usually not Israelites. They're usually non-Israelites that believe in God. Right? God-fearers. So that's one clue that's there. Okay, so they didn't do it. Pharaoh comes back and he asks, hey, what's going on? Why didn't you do it? You read in the 19th verse, the midwives answered him, it's because the Hebrew women, there's another clue, rather than it's because no, they say the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives. So they must, in their minds, have been thinking these people are like animals. You know, they just mate and boom, pop out another one, and mate, boom, pop out another one. We can't get to them quick enough, okay? So then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, every boy that is born, throw in the river, but let all the girls live. Now, if I'm letting you know this because I read it, it doesn't mean that what I'm about to tell you doesn't mean that it's true. It just made me go, okay? In one of the other old ancient Hebrew writings, and I believe it's Jasher, there was a man that sat down with Pharaoh and helped him figure out what to do with the Hebrew babies and throw them in the river. Anybody want to guess who that man was? He's in the Bible. Job. Yep, that's what it says in the book of Jasher, that the man named Job came down from Uz. He was very wealthy, very well-to-do, like a prince among people of the day, and he was in Egypt when all of this was going on, and sat down with Pharaoh and said, "You know what? Why don't you get rid of the baby boys? That'll help handle it." So now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I always wondered why Job's name in Hebrew, do you know what it means? Anybody know? Hated one. Job's name in Hebrew means the hated one. So there were Hebrews that didn't like Job. I don't know. It's just interesting. Okay, yes?
Where it says that the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women, they give birth quickly and hold up. No wonder. Hebrew women reverence God.
Yes.
Eat small
Yes.
birth in
Probably, yes.
the Egyptian women are following all these
Probably doctors.
gods. And they're fearful that this is going to happen, that will happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That's a good, yes. So, yeah, good. I like that. Okay, now, he was going to throw them in the Nile, in the river. The word throw, we have learned already, is the word shalak. All right? And by the way, what ends up happening is Pharaoh throws shalak Israel out of Egypt. When he's ready to let him go, he's like, "Get out!" Boom! All right? He runs them off. He doesn't want them there anymore. So he thinks about the economic thing that happens, and then he goes after them. But now, it might very well be that this was in Egypt, in the mind of the Egyptians, an offering that was given to the god of the Nile, who happened to be crocodile. All right? That's the image of the god of the Nile known as Obek, all right, who was a fertility god as well. Okay, let's keep reading in Exodus. There was a man from the family of Levi. He took a woman and descended from Levi as his wife. When she conceived and had a son, upon seeing what a fine child he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took a papyrus basket, coated it with clay and tar, put the child in it, placed it among the reeds on the riverbank. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen. Now, in your mind, you either right now probably have the Prince of Egypt or Charlton Heston. All that going on, right? Okay? So we're going to put more meat on it there. There is a quote of the Rabbi Rashi that Yocheved, that's Moses' mother, sensed something special about Moses' destiny that motivated her to take extraordinary measures to save his life. So, what's amazing is that the deliverer of Israel is going to come out of the water in which the devil's servant threw the babies. Okay? God has a way of doing things like that. By the way, the word basket or whatever it is in your version is the word tiva, which is the word used for the Ark of Noah, which was another thing to do with water. So the Hebrew Bible wants us to remember that. Okay? There's a relationship between Noah's ark and the ark that Moses is in. Yes?
Jochebed, that name, I believe, what I read said, it's glory of God.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Abode. Yep, that's really good. Isn't that amazing? Okay. This is the word used for the ark that Noah built, just as Yehovah saved Noah in a teva set in the water. Now Yehovah is going to save Israel through the one that's in a teva in the water. And in Hebrew, water is symbolic of chaos. So in the midst of the chaos, God sends a deliverer, and he does it more than once. Yes, Dana.
What's in the Ark of the Covenant?
Oh, yeah, it's a different word.
It's a
Yes.
different word than the Ark of
Yes,
the Covenant.
yes, yeah.
But it does also contain,
Contains the commandments, the words, 10 words, and Aaron's rod that budded, and a hunk of manna. Yep. Yep. Yes,
Boy,
James.
I'm still caught up in trying to figure out why water is chaos.
That-
The flood, is that why?
That's not only in Israel. That's an ancient Mid-East or Near East, Middle East, whatever belief. And it was probably a pagan idea to begin with.
Some type of light here
I know.
described as chaos.
I know. And that way it can be either chaos or power, because water is powerful. So it can mean either of those. It doesn't always mean chaos. But it's in the ancient mind. It's in their mind. Water.
And doesn't it have to do with the creation, that chaos, separating the firmament and the water?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Exactly. The waters above and the waters below. Second verse of Genesis, it was without form and void, and darkness was on the surface of the deep. The deep is the watery chaos. Yep. That's what it is. And remember, all right, I threw this out when we did Genesis, and I'm going to throw it out again. Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis, is not a book about science. Genesis is the answer to all of the other creation myths that were in the day of all of the people that lived in the Middle East, because they all had their creation stories. God's creation story flips them all on their head, okay? Another example of that, and I'll be talking about this a little Friday night, Gail and I, is the creation of woman, okay? The Hebrew Bible is the only creation account of any of those ancient people that has a woman created, okay? And the woman is created last. Why? What? That's exactly right, Shanita. The woman is created last to let everybody know that in Torah and in God's view, the woman is the apex of it all. Even though in Genesis 1, it says he created them male and female, all right, and he looked and everything was good, except that Adam, the man, was alone. Okay? And so then you have the second chapter and the creation of the woman. That was absolutely the opposite of the way that everybody else in the ancient world believed. Everybody else in the ancient world believed that women were to be used, basically. Okay? So there's a lot of that goes on in Genesis, and there's even a lot of that goes on in Exodus. I mean, how many of you knew before coming here or listening to Mark Beltz or whatever, that every one of the plagues of Egypt is a direct judgment against one of their gods? Okay? I never knew that. And when I learned that, I was like, whoa, that's, golly, God's doing a lot there. So, okay, where are we?
can you expound a little bit on power and strength?
What do you mean?
You said earlier that the man does stuff that he's supposed to do.
Yes.
The woman is able to do the stuff that she's
Yes, yes. Okay, I will. Okay, I'll give you a minute on that. A prelude at Friday night. The way that we have learned about women and men in Christianity is based on mainly readings of letters that were written by a rabbi that we didn't realize was a rabbi. Paul, and what he writes. And we remove them out of his rabbi mind and make them mean something that they do not mean. For example, the word that you have heard, the man is the what of the house? Head. What does that mean? Well, in our traditional understanding, it means he's the boss, right? I'm the head. I'm the head of this whatever. I'm the head of the house. That isn't what it means in Hebrew. That is what it means in Greek, maybe, to a Greek mind. What does it mean in the Hebrew mind? It means the head of the river. What's that? What's another word for the head of the river? You go all the way up the river till there's just a little spring. What is that known as? The source of the river, okay, that flows out. Well, didn't the woman come out of the man? That's all that means. Man is the head of the woman. That means that the woman was created out of the man. It doesn't mean that the man is the boss. Sorry.
So is there a different word for that then?
Boss?
No, head in that instance, because later in the Bible when God says you are the head, not the tail. I think that's the way a lot of
Yep.
interpret
Yep.
men being head of the household and women being submitted as kind of the tail in that scenario.
Yeah, which is, that I don't know in Hebrew. I know that's not in the New Testament. That's in the Tanakh, about you are the head and not the tail. I think it's in Deuteronomy. I think it's one of the blessings. You're going to be the head and not the tail, which would be an idiom that means you're not like everybody else in the world. Okay? But I don't think that applies to the man being the head and the woman being something else. I don't think that means that. See, in the Hebrew idea, the woman and the man are equal, okay? Which is why Paul in his letter, and by the way, in most of your English Bibles, there's a division. That division wasn't in his letter. The division is, here's what it's like with husbands and wives. Okay? And it begins with wives should submit to their husbands, blah, 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 right? There's a verse before that. But that verse is in most English Bibles in a different paragraph under a different heading. Remove the heading, remove the paragraph, and how does all that section begin? Submit to one another, out of reverence for the Messiah. And then he goes, wives, submit to your husbands. Okay, he's laying out what he means by submit to one another. So he lays that out, and then he gets down to the husbands, and he goes, husbands, love your wives. Why? Why is the wife told by Paul she needs to submit, and the husband told he needs to love? Because in the place to where he wrote the letter, neither one of them were doing the opposite. Okay? So he's like, well, women need to learn how to submit. Why? Because they're natural leaders. Wives, is that right? Aren't you aren't you Mama Bear? Okay? Well, Mama Bear, calm down. Okay? And what are husbands? Husbands are the guys that go out and work and come back in and rah, rah, and he goes, husbands, you need to learn how to love your wife, not just make the money. So he's just being practical rabbi. So we take it and make a doctrine out of it where women are here, men are here, and that's not Torah at all. Okay?
Does that also go along with the fact that men were able to throw away their wives?
Yes, that's exactly right. That was...
Wife is like, don't just discard.
Yes, that was happening in Yeshua's day, which is why we got into that last Friday night with Yeshua looking at the guys and going, by the way, the reason that command is in Torah is because you have lev, your minds, your hearts are hardened, just like another guy that we're reading about. His heart was hardened. Pharaoh, right? Because Pharaoh would not submit.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding women being leaders and Paul needing to tell them to submit, is part of that back, all the way back to Adam and Eve, when women would then try to control their husbands? Is part of that
Yes.
the curse of that?
Yes. And you used a word there that's really important that we realize is not a word that's in God's relationship book. Control.
The recommended man?
Yeah, the recommended manual. Nobody ever controls anybody else. That's out of that is not what we are to do. Okay? Love and control are opposites.
So I have another question.
That's all right.
Conversations about
Well, it's letting me know that maybe Friday night's message will be there'll be at least two, maybe, because
I had
we need to know.
with friends after that, specifically related to a man is doing what he's supposed to do, and the woman is doing what she's supposed to do. And I actually am a little bit skeptical of that because I look at, like, even if a man does what he's supposed to do, it's very common in culture today for a woman to say, but you didn't do it right.
Which is why it's among believers and why all of us need to know what the model is, what the biblical model is.
Example is among believers.
Yes, 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 yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because if it isn't, well, you got nothing.
Even if a man's doing the right thing.
Yeah. But and how are they going to be one in the Bible? You know, the Bible's idea of what it means to be one, when the Bible's idea of what it means to be one has to do with your connection and direction with God and being His image on earth. See, a husband and wife together. When God said that man was made in the image of God, He didn't mean a man, He meant man and woman. Because at that point, there was no woman. There was only Adam, right? That means that Adam had the woman in him, right? Because she came out of the man. And so that means the image of God is made male and female, which means a husband and a wife. This is why marriage is the example in the Bible of our relationship with God, because the husband and the wife together are to present the image of God to the world. One of them without the other can't do it. Okay, at least they can't do it the way that it's meant to be done. That doesn't mean if a guy's not married that he can't be the image of God, but he's not going to be the fullness of the image of God, because that's found in the marriage relationship. Boy, don't you wish you knew this when you were 20?
But didn't Paul say it would be better if you didn't get married but couldn't control your passions and getting
Yeah, that's another book. That's another rabbi statement. And you always have to ask, who's he writing to? Who's he writing that to? What are they doing? Because there have been times I've looked at people and said something, but I don't want to say that to everybody, right? I mean, there was a time I looked at somebody and said, never mind.
It's quite interesting about our government.
I'm online.
It's quite interesting about our government that our government was made for a Christian nation.
Yes.
If we're not moral and we try to have our government,
It doesn't work. It's exactly right. It doesn't work. It'll end up at one extreme or the other. You're going to end up with either a dictator or you're going to end up with anarchy, which ends up with a dictator. So that's the direction we're going right now. Yep. Okay, let's move on. If we don't get done with this tonight, it's not the end of the world. So, in Moses, and you know about Moses, and he grows up and he goes out and he finds the Egyptian who's beating up on the Hebrew, and he, kills the Egyptian and buries him. And then he finds some Hebrews that are fighting amongst themselves, and he goes over and breaks it up. And one of them looks at him and says, "Who appointed you ruler and judge over us?" Well, God did. Or he's about to do that. So there's a word in the narrative there that gives you a foreshadowing of what Moses is going to be. Because Moses is going to be the voice of God and the judge, over Israel. Which, imagine that. You're, 17, 18, whatever he was. I don't know how old he was because it's not in there. But in the movies, he's 17 or 18. And he does this, and the guy goes, "Who made you judge and ruler over us?" And Moses would be like, I don't know, just what you're doing is wrong, all right? Now, that lets you know that in this man, Moses, there already was this feeling of justice and righteousness. And when he looked at something that wasn't right, he did something about it. He dealt with it. Okay, so God knew what he was doing when he picked Moses. Of course he did. All right. All right, now, Moses leaves, goes out to the land of Midian, which, by the way, is in modern-day Saudi Arabia, which you can look on a map, any Bible map, look at where Midian is. Moses went to Midian. He met Jehovah in Midian, on a mountain in Midian. Midian is not on that little jut that comes down where your Bibles have, that's where Mount Sinai is. No, Mount Sinai is in Midian, which is in Arabia, which is what Paul wrote about in Galatians. He said, Mount Sinai in Arabia. So your Bible maps have it wrong. All right. Now, he meets a woman there, Zipporah, who is given as to be his wife. Okay, and we're going around this one again, where the man meets his wife at a well, and the man is like the hero who helps water what's there at the well, and then you meet it again in Jesus and the woman at the well, because there's a man at the well who's a hero, and he's going to give the woman water at the well. It's really neat how that happens over and over and over again in Torah and in the Bible. Okay, and there's the pattern listed there for what happens. Okay, so now Moses is in Midian, and there's a bush, and the bush is being burning, and Moses looks up and he says, "Quick, everybody, run and hide. There's a burning bush up there, and we don't know what it is." No. Moses says, "I'm going to go over there and look at this and see what is this amazing sight." Maybe that explains why when I hear sirens and I see smoke, I go to look. I want to know what is going on over there. All right? When he got there, when Adonai saw that he had gone over to see, he called to him from the middle of the bush. "Moses, Moses," he answered. "Here I am." Hineni is what he answered. We learned about that in Genesis, okay? That word Hineni. So then the bush says to him, "Don't come any closer. Take the sandals off your feet. The place where you are standing is holy ground." Why? Why was it holy ground? Because the presence of God was there, and there was an interaction going on. Okay? So it's the presence of God and interaction with human beings that makes the ground holy. So then he tells him, "I am the God of your father." He continued, "the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Okay? God then tells Moses that he knows intimately what is going on with Israel, and he's come to deliver them. right? He says, I've heard their groaning. I know what's going on, and I'm here to deliver them. How is he going to do this? He says to Moses, because, by the way, Moses was really happy to hear that he's going to deliver his people, Israel. Moses was like, finally, okay? And then God says, now, come, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh so that you can lead my people, the descendants of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? And God replied, I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. That's a little bizarre, okay? First is that Moses says, who am I to do this? And God doesn't tell him who he is. God says, I will be with you. Doesn't matter who you are. If God is with you, you're good to go, right? It doesn't matter. God used Moses. Moses had amazing gifts. God used Gideon. Gideon apparently didn't have such amazing gifts, but it doesn't matter. If God is with you, you can do whatever it is, okay? And then he says, this is how you're going to know that this was all me. When you get to the end of it, you're going to worship me on this mountain. So I would have been going, can you give me a sign now? Well, you already have a burning bush that burns, but it's not burned up, Moses. So it's a big deal what's going on here. Okay, so Moses says, who am I? And then Moses says to God, look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Why do they want to know his name? Okay, number one, which God are you? We live in Egypt. There's 100 of them. Which God are you? That's one reason. Second reason is if you know the name, sometimes you can exert influence over. Okay? A couple of things that are going on here. And I say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask, what is his name? What am I to tell them? God said to Moses, Eye Asher Eye. Okay? Which is, I am and will be what I am and will be. Okay? And then added, here's what to say to the people of Israel. Eye, or I am, or I will be, has sent me to you. And then God further said to Moses, say to the people of Israel, Yud-He Vav-He. Okay, in the complete Jewish Bible, it's Adonai, but it's Yud-He Vav-He, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever. And this is how I am to be remembered, generation after generation. Okay? It's one of the reasons why we use the name Yehovah, because of this right here, these verses right here. Okay? Now, think about this. Is the name of Elohim, because that's God, in Hebrew is Elohim. The name of Elohim is Yehovah. So is the name of Yehovah a noun or a verb? It's a verb. His name is a verb. Okay? That's really relevant. The reason his name is a verb is he's known by what he does. It's his actions that describe who he is. There's no way to describe who Elohim is without describing what he does, his actions. And I argue, same thing goes for you and me. Okay? We're not this essence of whatever your name is. You are not removed from your actions. Now, I know that goes against traditional Christian thinking, and it goes against some traditional psychology, where you've heard, well, you're not a human doing. You're a human being. Have you ever heard that? What? No, I've heard that, and I'm like, what? I don't even, what does that mean? A human being. That means I'm just supposed to, what, go sit in my house and be? I am being, you know? That's not what it means. I know, you know that. That's not what it means to be a human being. To be a human being is to do. It's what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do when you get up in the morning? By the way, when people get older and they lose their doing is when they die. Very often. Okay? So what that means is keep doing. Don't stop and just sit there, because that's not what you were designed to do. You were designed to do something, whatever it is, okay? And you're in the image of God, okay? Now, Yud-He-Vav-He, or Yehovah, is known in Greek and in theological languages, that big word on the top of 6, tetragrammaton, okay? It means in third person, he is who he is and he will be who he will be. It doesn't mean I am. It means he is. I am is what his identification was. But what you are to identify him as he is. Does that make sense? Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Okay? And it means he is who he is and he will be who he will be. It's not a only now. It's a now and a future verb. Okay? Why not? So he doesn't give them a name like my name is Bob or whatever. He gives them this deep meaning of who he is by saying, I am the one who is and will be. And you ask, you are and you will be what? And the answer is, whatever I am needed to be. Okay? So this is why in the Bible, and this is 4 examples of many that are in the Tanakh, okay? When you need a shepherd, he is Yehovah Ra'ah, your shepherd. When you need a healer, he is Yehovah Rophe, your healer. When you need provision, he is Yehovah Yirah, your provider. When you need peace, he is Yehovah Shalom, your peace. This name that he reveals to Moses, and by the way, I think he said, or we read in this reading, by my name I was not known to your fathers, right? Did you read that? Do you remember reading that? Did a little question mark pop up in your head because you remember going back to Genesis and reading that Abraham once called him by his name, Yehovah? And that in Genesis 4, at the end of it, it says, and then people began to call on Yehovah. So what does he mean? If they knew him by his name in Genesis, then why in Exodus does he go, well, they didn't know me by my name? Okay, all right. It could be both of these, because it is written in after, okay, is one, and the other is they knew the word, but they didn't have any idea what it meant or who he was. And he's about to reveal who he is to Israel, to everybody. And they had lost their identity. It's absolutely right. Yep. Good. All good answers. Okay. Now, the Yod-He-Vav-He in the ancient pictograph is a hand, behold, and a nail, behold. The hand, behold, the nail, behold. The hand, behold, the hand revealed, the nail revealed. All there in the pictograph of his name. I just think that cannot be a coincidence, right? Okay, so now he tells Moses, go, gather the leaders of Israel together. Say to them, Yehovah, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, I have been paying close attention to you and have seen what is being done to you in Egypt. Okay, now we're going to have a little fun. Not that you haven't already. Okay, in the Bible translation that I was using when I wrote this year, I'm using the Complete Jewish Bible. Is it the most accurate? No, it's not. Okay, but it gives more of the Hebrew flavor of the Bible. There is no English Bible that is accurate. Okay? There's English Bibles that are less inaccurate than others. Okay? King James is not bad. The New American Standard and the English Standard, the NASB and the ESV, are the most accurate that we have been able to get in English. But English is not Hebrew, so you miss a whole lot, right? Okay? This is something that we miss, and I believe even the Complete Jewish Bible misses it. Okay, the words that are translated there, paying close attention, is the word pikad, which means watch over. Okay? And in the Hebrew, it's twice together, right together. Okay? What that means is emphasis. Whenever there are two words together, it's great emphasis. In the garden, you are Adam was allowed to eat of all of the fruit and whatever was in the garden. Okay? Emphasis. But don't eat of that, because in the day that you eat of that, you will die. That's what it is in Hebrew. This is another one of those. Okay? I am watching over you. All right? Now, keep that in your mind. I'm going to jump ahead now to Exodus 36, I believe, where Yehovah reveals more to Moses about his name. This is not in your notes, so this is a freebie, and you'll get this later, but it's good to get it more than once. Remember when he hides Moses in the rock, he reveals his name. Here's who I am. And in that name, there's a whole list of what he's like, right? Everything on that list, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Forgiving and full of graciousness and full of love and just all of these amazing things that he is. And then he says he's not going to leave the guilty undealt with. Okay? What that means is the Egyptians that are oppressing you, I will deal with them. It doesn't mean I'm looking at you and you better behave, because if you don't, I'm going to get you. No, these words are spoken to Moses and they're spoken to Israel, and they're to let him and us know that even though it looks like the wicked win, they don't win. Okay? God's going to deal with the wicked in the end. But then it goes on. So he says all of these amazing things, and then at the very end of it, he goes, and this is the way in almost every English Bible, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the second and third generation. Okay, in the Complete Jewish Bible, I think, this is my opinion on it, he really messes it up. Because for the word visiting the iniquity, he writes punishing the second and third generation for the iniquity of the fathers. Okay? Now, just reading that in English ought to make you go, wait a second. I've read all of these great, amazing things, and now I'm reading that if I blow it, God's going to visit my grandson with punishment because of what I did. That doesn't go with the rest of this description of God. So something's wrong. Then, if you go on and read Deuteronomy and you read Torah, you find out it's against the law. It's against Torah to punish your children for what you have done. Okay? So that can't be what it means. Guess what? This is the word. The word that we have translated in most of our English Bibles as visiting or even punishing is the word pekad, which means watch over. Okay? So what it really says in Exodus 36 is, I am this and this and this and this and this, and I don't leave the guilty undealt with. I will deal with the guilty. And I am watching over the children of those who sin to the third, fourth generation. Well, isn't that better? Isn't that good news? Now, and why does he do that? Why does he need to watch over them? Because their mothers and fathers gave them bad ideas. Okay? And God's like, you know what? I'm going to watch over them, and I'm going to limit the damage that's able to be done by the fathers and mothers. So I think that's an amazing word in Hebrew. Now, something else amazing about this, okay, is when we read that I'm going to watch over, I have been watching over Israel, that word is the exact word that Jacob, not Joseph. Joseph said to his brothers when he was about to die at the end of Genesis, he said, I am dying, but God will pekad. He uses the double Hebrew again. God will watch over you. God will watch over you. Only in the Bible that we're reading from, it's remember. See, I will remember you is not nearly as strong as I will watch over you. I will watch over you. So that's why it's neat to learn Hebrew. Okay, moving on. Yehovah said to Moses, when you get back to Egypt, make sure that you do before Pharaoh every one of the wonders I've enabled you to do. Nevertheless, I'm going to make him hard-hearted, and he will refuse to let the people go. Okay, here we go. Hard-hearted. We'll do this again, and then we'll do it again next week. Okay? God made Pharaoh's heart hard. The heart is the leb in Hebrew, which is the inner man, the mind, the will. It is your free will. Your leb. Okay? To be hard-hearted is grow strong or strengthen. So what Yehovah is doing with Pharaoh's free will is he's strengthening it. He's not going in and making Pharaoh be mean. Okay? He doesn't have to do that. Pharaoh's already mean. Okay? What he's doing is he's giving Pharaoh the opportunity to either follow Yehovah and bow and submit to him, or reveal what's really in his heart.
See a boxing match and him on the mat, and getting back, the father stopping, allowing him to get back up and say, you want to go again?
That's exactly right. That's the exact picture of it. Yes? I don't believe it is. Okay, that's a really good question, and I don't know. I can look it up if I remember, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Because later on in the Exodus here with Pharaoh, in next week's reading, he uses a different word in Hebrew. But in English, it's all one word. Hardened, hardened, hardened. And the idea with the English and the theologians is God can do what he wants, and if he wants to take a man and use him by overriding his free will and making him an example, he'll do that. Okay? But that's not really the Hebrew view. That's the Christian view. The Hebrew view is God was just giving him another chance to submit if he wanted to submit. How did he know that he wouldn't submit? Well, you know, because of his actions, because of his reputation. reputation because of everything that he had done. And so God's like, all right, well, we'll see how this goes with this fight that you want to fight. Because Pharaoh believed that he was a god. So why would I bow down to a God I don't even know? Didn't he say that? He said, I don't know your God. I don't know Yehovah, and neither will I bow down. Why? Because I'm just as much a God as he is. Okay? Something else I'll bring out, because I guess we're about done, is that when... and this may be in next week's reading, and maybe I just read this in the last couple days. But when he turned Moses' rod into a snake, it's not the word that means hissing snake. It's the word that means crocodile. Way. And the crocodile is the god of the Nile. According to the Hebrew, yes.
That's a massive difference.
It's a massive difference. I know, it is. It's a massive difference. Then later on, he mentions a snake, but he's not mentioning the snake that his staff was. He's mentioning the snake back in the garden, which is a different word. So, I think that's interesting. I mean, that is even more meaningful. Boom! Crocodile! Whoa! And the crocodile is a god. So he's letting them know, look, you Nile worshipers, because everything revolves around the Nile, the crocodile, Sobek, is the god of the Nile. So his miracle is, I'm going to pull this crocodile out. Boom! There he is. And then I'm going to deal with the Nile by making it turn into blood. So now what are you going to do with your God?
Okay, so this crocodile, though, ate up the crocodiles from all of Pharaoh's wizards that threw down. That was a bloodbath then, right?
Yeah, that would have been neat to watch. We were down in Florida and visited the Everglades, which I love to do when I go down there. And we went to this alligator place. There were gators everywhere. It was amazing. But then they had some gators that were in their own lake or whatever. And they had this guy that walked right into the alligator, big, long alligator. He just walked right in, walked right over it like this, called it by name, went down and touched its nose. I guess it's a trained alligator, but, every 8 or 10 years, one of those guys gets, zapped by whatever they're dealing with. Hundreds? No. Not hundreds.
Like paths and stuff, and then they
Not hundreds, no. No. Some, it has happened. It happens more now.
I don't go to Florida very often.
It happens more now than it used to happen, and there's 2 reasons. One, there's more people there, and secondly, there's more alligators because they put them on the endangered list. So they became like logs. Just logs. I would go down to the lake, the big lake, Lake Okeechobee, and go fishing on a boat and go out at 5 in the morning before the sun comes up. You get out the canal onto the lake, so right when the sun's coming up, you can throw it out and get your bass. And as the sun's coming up, you're looking out there, and it looks like you're in the middle of a logging camp, and they're all gators. Well, they're not going to jump in your boat.
I don't know.
Uh,
You should find a way to incorporate that into
okay, here's a story. When I was a youth minister, which would have been like 40 years ago almost, we had a youth camp that had 3 lakes. This is in Florida, right? We owned the lakes and we owned the land, and every year we'd take the youth out there for the summer, different groups of youth and everything. And I would teach water skiing. We had a boat, and I would get the youth and teach them how to water ski, ski them around the lake. Well, every year we'd have to go out to the lake in like May, or we took the kids out there and hire a guy down the road to come in with his airboat and get as many gators out of the lake as he was able to get out. And he would do it at night, come in his airboat, had a big old light, had big hunks of meat, and he'd take them out there at night. And then he'd come in the next day, and there'd be like a stack of wood, which is a stack of gators, and they just had duct tape around their noses. And that's all. Because the alligator has almost zero strength to open its mouth. Okay? Once it's open, it has tremendous clamp down. But to get it open, you can do this. And it won't be able to open its mouth. So if you're ever in Florida, fall in the water, and an alligator comes up to you, just grab him right there and look him in the eyes. But anyway, so you never get them all out.
Did you ever lose a kid?
No, of course not. You never get them all out. You may think that you get them all out, but you never get them all out. They're everywhere. So they'll go and, travel around at night. It's like getting moose. What are you going to get a moose out of the woods back in there? No. So one day we were water skiing, and there was a girl behind. She was probably a 9th grader. I remember her well. And I'm driving the boat, and she's water skiing behind like this, and I'm like, oh, there's an alligator, like right there floating on top of the water. So I just turned around like this, and I went, don't fall. And she was like, she just looked at me like this, and I went, and she was like, oh. So when the boat got there, the gator went down under the water. So she kept going. She didn't fall. Thank God. Alligator stories. These are online now.
The lady, Pharaoh's daughter, she bathed in the Nile there. And
Right.
they believed that the alligators were gods
Yes.
and that they were gods for fertility.
Yes. Fertility gods.
And they weren't afraid to go into the water and bathe.
I don't know. Maybe they had a barrier or something to keep them out. But I guess this is what I'm getting at with the whole alligator deal. It's just like in Alaska with moose and bears. Okay? They're everywhere. If you do what you need to do in general, you don't need to worry about them. Right? You just know, leave them alone. Okay? Don't feed them. That's the worst thing that you can do. And just in general, stay out of their way. They're not going to bother you. But I was raised that way, so I know that. But people that weren't raised down there, they don't know any of that stuff. Like
Tourists are afraid of bears in here.
and moose and everything else. Yeah, I respect them. I'm not gonna, if there's a moose in the middle of the trail and I'm hiking down it, I'm not just gonna walk up to him and go, "Hey, get out of here." I'll stand back a little way before I do that, but I will do that. I'll say, "Moose, move on, get out." But I want to be far enough back that if he runs at me, I can maneuver away. But I realized that I learned to swim in a river, black water, because most of the rivers in Florida are black water because of all the oak leaves fall in them, and the rivers and the lakes are just dark. They're black. And there were alligators. And nobody ever said anything to me about it. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to learn to swim, but there's alligators, so you got to be careful. It was just like, jump in the water. So anyway, now people have been feeding them, and they've been allowed to, overpopulate the areas, people and gators. So now you have them together, and you have people that don't know any better, and I wouldn't bring my dog out today into a lake in Florida and do the fetch it game. Today, I wouldn't do that. When I was young, I would have done that because there weren't as many of them as there are today. Okay, well, that's the end of the lesson tonight. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick, it's always kind of bothered me. I wanted your answer to it.
Okay.
Backdrop would be speaking to a Christian believer of the Trinity, and to go back to the fact that he says no one has seen the face of God. But in this example we're talking about, Moses at the bush, it talks about the angel of Adonai appeared to him in a flame within the bush. But it goes on to say, when Adonai saw that he looked, he then called him over to the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses," and he answered him. So we have two parts of the Trinity, per se. Yet we also have the physical representation of God as a spirit in front of Moses. He's looking at it, or is he not? So it's kind of, is he looking at the second person of the Trinity, or is he looking upon God?
I wish I could give you an answer to that one. I don't know. I think it, absolutely I do. I know that there's a lot of people believe that when God is visible and people behold him in the Tanakh, it's Jesus. It's Yeshua in physical form. I'm all right with that. I have no problem with that at all. It's, looking at the pace of Yehovah, it says no man is able to do that and live. Okay, well, I accept that. At least not yet, you're not able to do that and live. Maybe one day we will be able to do that and live. So to me, to look at that angel and look at those appearances as the Word, the Word that was made flesh, yeah. I don't have any problem with that at all. I don't know that. I'm not like 100% saying this is what it was, but that makes complete sense to me. That it was Jesus in his heavenly pre-human earth body form. Physical manifestation. This is interesting. In Judaism, they have a belief in what is known as the two powers in the heavens. That you have Yehovah, and then you have something like a son of God, which is what shows up in Daniel. That's right. In Daniel, in the furnace, when he goes in, he says there's the guys are in there, and there's somebody else who looks like a son of God. What does that mean? Well, to me, that means Jesus, Yeshua, was in there with him.
Well, Jacob, we have.
It's Jacob and the angel wrestling, right?
The angel appears as if he's a man.
Right.
With a sword.
And if you can get away from the idea of angel and use the word messenger, isn't Yeshua a messenger of his Father?
Agreed.
Yeah. So I don't have any problem at all saying the angel of Yehovah is Yeshua, his messenger.
A man. It doesn't make me believe it's a person standing here. The rest of the examples.
Right. And I think there's an element of it where we are kind of to realize that it's beyond us. And it's like, whatever is going on here, I don't really have words. There aren't really words. Yeah, impressive.
Similar to being born again.
That you don't have words?
Well, we were talking about Jesus showing up in all these different places in the Old Testament. And all of a sudden, Jesus gets born again. And then he tells, is it Zacchaeus? In order to...
No, it's not Zacchaeus, it's the other guy. Nicodemus.
Nicodemus?
Yeah.
That you must be born again in order to enter into the...
Well, I guess we can go there for a minute. Those are not his words. Okay? He says, in order to do what? You must be born again.
I couldn't remember.
What do you have to do? In order... What?
The
See it. Okay? Not just enter it, but see it. In other words, in order for you to acknowledge and have the perception of the kingdom of God, you have to be born from above. It doesn't literally say again, it says from above. You got to be born from above. Okay? Born again, born from above. That's the meaning of it. And the funny thing is, that was not new. That was something that every Jewish rabbi ought to already have known, that that's what needed to happen, which is why he looked at Nicodemus and he was like, dude, you're a rabbi and you don't know this? How can you not know this? All right, if you're going to get to see but Nicodemus, like all the other rabbis, came to believe that that birth from above, which is a birth of the Spirit in you, was a Jewish rite that happened at baptism. Okay? Because in the Judaism of the day, when you were immersed, you were born again into being Jewish, into being a Jew. Okay? Which is also one of the things that Paul addresses in Galatians and Ephesians about doing the works of Judaism, the works of the law, meaning the works of their law. Okay? And one of them was you had to be immersed, born again, and you had to be have a brit milah, a circumcision, which made you Jewish, so you could convert to Judaism. Paul and Yeshua were both like, no, you're missing this, okay? This is something that is done by the Spirit. It's not something done by the hands of men, okay? But I guess if you don't know the background and you don't know that, then you just read it and you're like, oh, okay, well, the works of the law, he must mean the Ten Commandments. It's like, no, he's not talking about the Ten Commandments. He's talking about all of those other works that you had to do to be Jewish. So I think Nicodemus was there, and I think he heard him. I think Nicodemus heard him. I don't think he was like one of the ones that wanted to murder him. Doesn't he show up later?
He is with
Disciples?
no, he's one of the guys with the guy from Arimathea.
Joseph from Arimathea. Yeah, that's right.
He goes with him
To get the body.
to get the body and to anoint him.
Yep. So maybe that night, Nicodemus was born again. Born from above.
From above.
Yep, that night. That happens to everybody that wants that to happen to them, right? So, all of y'all, I hope. Right? Okay, anything else? All right, good night. Think of all you learned about alligators. We went to Torah class tonight and we learned about gators.
I don't know how much teeth they have.